Julian's at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, women in silk gowns. His phone buzzes. Dad, he almost doesn't answer. But he does. Julian, I need to talk to you. It's serious. Background noise. Laughter. Someone's ordering a $400 tomahawk steak. Julian covers the phone with his hand. Dad, I'm celebrating the Hendricks account. Can this wait? Son, I'm at the hospital. They found something. The heart valve. I need $5,000 for. Dad, stop. Julian's voice goes flat, cold as steel. You're a bad investment. You always have been. Ask the state for a payment plan. Click. He hangs up. Goes back to his scotch like nothing happened. What Julian didn't know, sitting in that parking lot in Gary, Indiana, was that his father was holding the one document that would destroy everything Julian had spent 5 years building. Every single thing. Let me back up. My name is Elias Karen. I'm 61 years old. I live in Gary, Indiana. Rust Belt, shipbreaker town. The kind of place where the steel mills died 30 years ago and never came back. I spent 3 decades welding in the shipyards, cutting apart freighters, oil tankers, cargo ships, till my lungs gave out from the fumes. Now I drive a forklift at a warehouse off Route 12. 6 days a week, 10-hour shifts. I come home smelling like diesel and sawdust. My son Julian, he's a high-frequency trader in Chicago. Makes more in a day than I made in a year. Lives in a Lincoln Park condo. Lake views. Doorman. The works. My daughter Maya, night shift hospice nurse, lives in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment near the old steel mill. Takes the bus to work because her car died 2 years ago, and she can't afford another one. She never complains. Not once. Julian complains about everything, especially me. Now, back to that hospital parking lot. I'm sitting in my 2009 Silverado. The AC barely works. It's July, 94 degrees, humid as a mouth. The parking lot smells like diesel and hot asphalt. My hands are shaking, cold sweat on the back of my neck. I just got done talking to a woman named Becky in billing. She's got kind eyes, but her job isn't kind. Mr. Karen, your insurance has a coverage gap for this procedure. She slides a paper across the desk. Out-of-pocket deposit before we can schedule surgery, $5,000. $5,000. I used to make that in a week back when I owned the dock. Back in 1998, I bought an old shipyard dock at auction. Thought I'd flip it. Never did. Just held on to it. Paid the taxes. Hoped it'd be worth something someday. It wasn't. The EPA red-tagged it 10 years ago. Environmental contamination. Some old fuel line ruptured under the property next door. Crude oil blowed into the soil. My dock got locked under a federal cleanup order. Couldn't sell it. Couldn't build on it. Couldn't do a damn thing with it. Except pay property taxes every year and watch my credit die. Now, I've got $340 in checking. Maybe. I can't breathe right. Haven't been able to for months. Dr. Ferris says it's scaring. Asbestos. Rust particulate in my lungs. We need to replace that valve, Elias. Soon. Weeks, not months. So I called my son, the one with $12 million in managed accounts. The one who just closed a deal so big he rented out a private room at Perry's Steakhouse, and he told me I was a bad investment. Then he hung up. I sat in that truck for an hour, watched the sun go down over the empty docks, smelled the oil, the rust, the lake water. The phone felt like a brick in my hand. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I just did the math. Over and over and over. It never came out right. 2 days later, I met Maya at a diner off Route 20. The kind with vinyl booths and a waitress named Brenda who calls everyone honorable. The place smelled like burnt coffee and fryer grease. The vinyl booth stuck to my arm when I sat down. I didn't plan to ask her for money. I really didn't. I was going to smile, eat my eggs, let her think I was fine. She knew before I said a word. She always knows. "Dad," she set her fork down, looked me dead in the eye. "What's wrong? Tell me right now." So I told her. The mess, the valve, the $5,000 I didn't have, the surgery I couldn't afford. I didn't even finish the sentence. Maya reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope. Then she turned her phone around so I could see the screen. Payday loan, approved, $1,800. Interest rate, 22%. "There's $3,200 in there," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "I sold my car this morning." "Maya." "Dad, stop talking." She grabbed my hand across that formica table. Hard, like she was holding on to something she wasn't going to let go of. "Cars can be replaced. You can't." She squeezed tighter. "I'm taking the bus to work for a while. It's fine. I probably need the exercise anyway." I sat in that booth and wept, in front of Brenda and half the lunch crowd. And my daughter, the one who didn't have $12 million, the one nobody ever bragged about on the phone, held my hand and told me I was going to be okay. She's the only one who ever saw me. The only one. Now, let me tell you about Julian's life. While Maya was selling her car and signing predatory loan papers, Julian was in his Lincoln Park condo, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. He was wearing a $20,000 Patek Philippe watch, custom-tailored suit, Italian loafers. His wife Eleanor was planning their annual charity gala, $500 a plate. "It's good optics," she told her friends. "Julian doesn't help people. He networks with people. Every relationship is a transaction. Every dinner is a deal. Every human being is either an asset or a liability." And I was a liability. A stain on his carefully curated portfolio. An embarrassment he had to manage. He told Eleanor that once. I overheard it at Thanksgiving 3 years ago. "My father's a cautionary tale, Eleanor. That's his only value now." She laughed. They toasted. I went home early. I haven't been back since. 2 weeks after surgery, I'm healing on Maya's pullout couch. Her apartment's small. You can hear the neighbors through the walls. Someone upstairs watches the news too loud every night at 7. She taped her bus schedule to the fridge with a magnet. Route 89. Departs 6:40 a.m. I looked at that schedule every single morning. She's out there in the cold, I thought, waiting at a bus stop in the freezing wind, because she saved my life. And Julian's drinking $300 scotch. Then the mail came. Certified. Signature required. 2 letters. One from the EPA. One from something called Green Wave Energy Consortium. I almost didn't open them. I was tired. Still sore across the ribs. Didn't want more bad news. But something made me sit down at Maya's little kitchen table and tear them open. I opened the EPA letter first. Read it once. Then again. Then a third time because I didn't trust my own eyes. Remediation status. Complete. Site released from federal oversight. Effective August 3rd. Complete. 10 years. 10 years of property taxes on land I couldn't touch. 10 years of debt collectors calling at dinner. 10 years of my own family looking at me like I was toxic waste. And it was done. Released. Clean. I set that letter down on the table like it might explode. Then I opened the second one. Green Wave Energy Consortium. Offshore Wind Hub. Lake Michigan Deepwater Port Authority. They needed a dock. Not just any dock. My dock. The rusted, worthless shipyard dock I'd owned since 1998. The one Julian made me sign away liability for 5 years ago. The letter was a formal acquisition offer. A real one, with legal letterhead and everything. The number at the bottom made my hands shake. But I'm not going to tell you what it was yet. Not yet. Just know this. 3 weeks ago, I was crying in a diner because I couldn't come up with $5,000. Now I'm holding this. I looked up from that letter. My eyes landed on the bus schedule stuck to the fridge. Route 89, 6:40 a.m. Maya's handwriting in the corner. Neat. Careful. She's out there right now, I thought. Standing at a bus stop in the August heat, and I'm sitting here holding this. That's when something in me went very, very quiet. And very, very clear. I didn't call Julian. I didn't call Eleanor. I want you to remember that. I didn't hide this from anyone. I just didn't see one single reason to tell people who'd already made it crystal clear that my problems weren't their problems. So I called someone else instead. Larry Foster, my old attorney. One of the only professionals who stuck around after the shipyard went under. Larry, it's Elias. Elias. Good Lord, man. How you feeling? Maya said the surgery went well. Larry, I need you to look at some paperwork for me. Today. Right now if you can. Something in my voice stopped him cold. What's going on? I told him everything. The EPA release. The green wave offer. The number. Long pause on the other end. Papers shuffling. Elias, Larry said slowly. That changes everything. I know it does. I looked at that bus schedule one more time. That's exactly why I need you to pull something else first, before we do anything with this offer. You remember a document Julian had you draw up about 5 years back? Larry went quiet. Real quiet. The liability partition and release. That's the one. I remember it, Elias. Julian was very insistent. Said it would protect his reputation. Said if your debts ever went to court, he didn't want his name attached. Pull it. Word for word. Don't leave nothing out. Because if I remembered that document right, Julian didn't just protect himself from my failures. He legally signed himself out of everything that came after. Good or bad. Win or lose. Larry called me back 2 hours later. I could hear papers shuffling on his end. Elias, I'm going to read you the operative language here. Exact wording. He cleared his throat. Julian Karen and Eleanor Karen hereby waive, release, and forever discharge any and all present or future claim, interest, or right, legal or equitable, in and to the real property and industrial assets owned by Elias Karen, including any proceeds, appreciation, or value realized thereof, regardless of cause. Regardless of cause. Those 3 words sat in the air like a bomb. Larry, I said, real slow. Does that partition agreement mean what I think it means? It means exactly what we drew up 5 years ago, Elias. Julian wanted to protect his credit, his business reputation. So he forced you to take 100% ownership of that dock as your sole separate asset. Legally partitioned it out of any marital or family estate. He signed away every claim to it, present and future. Larry exhaled slow into the phone. Whatever happens to that property now, good, bad, or worth millions, he has 0 legal claim to a single dime. I almost laughed. Except nothing about it felt funny. Julian set this whole thing up himself, didn't he? He did. Told you it was smart estate planning, protection from creditors. Son of a gun, Larry said quietly. Sure was smart. Just not in the direction he thought he was being smart. I sat there in Maya's kitchen. Afternoon sun coming through those thin apartment blinds. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt something in my chest that wasn't shame or fear. It was clarity. Pure. Cold. Clarity. Larry, I want to move on the green wave offer. Silence. I don't want a single soul outside this phone call knowing about it till it's done. Not Julian. Not Eleanor. Nobody. I looked at that bus schedule again. Route 89, 6:40 a.m. And I want a trust set up alongside the sale. Irrevocable. In Maya's name. Pause. All of it, Elias. Every dime after my debts get paid off. My voice didn't shake. Not even a little. She sold her car for me, Larry. She took out a payday loan at some ungodly interest rate so I could have surgery. She's been riding a city bus at 6:40 in the morning for 2 weeks straight. So I'd have a place to heal. I stopped. Had to. My throat went tight. Meanwhile, my son told me to ask the hospital for a payment plan. And his wife told me not to embarrass them at their charity event. So no, I'm not splitting this 3 ways for the sake of looking fair. Fair already happened. Fair happened in a diner off Route 23 weeks ago. And only one of my children showed up for it. I hear you, Elias, Larry said. I'll have the paperwork ready by Friday. One more thing, Larry. Yeah, don't put my name on the deed for the house I'm buying her. Trust owns it outright. Clean title. I don't want there to be one single piece of this anyone can argue about later. Airtight. Airtight. Larry repeated. I understand completely. I hung up the phone. Sat there a long while in that quiet apartment, listening to the hum of the window AC unit, looking at that little bus schedule stuffed to the fridge with a school magnet. They're going to find out eventually, I thought. And when they do, they're not going to come here asking how I'm feeling. They're going to come here asking about money. That's just who they are now. Maybe who they've always been. I wasn't wrong about that. 8 days later, there was a knock on Maya's door. Hard, loud, angry. Julian and Eleanor. And they brought papers. Julian didn't say hello. Didn't ask how I was healing. Didn't look at the surgical scar still tender under my shirt. He pushed past Maya without a word. Eleanor right behind him, arms crossed, face set hard. Julian's cologne hit me before his words did. Expensive, sharp. The kind that costs $200 a bottle. Eleanor's perfume right behind it. The apartment suddenly felt half the size. Dad. Julian's voice cracked. Just slightly. We need to talk. Now. Not how are you feeling, Dad. Not I'm sorry I hung up on you in a parking lot. Straight to business. Same as always. Sit down, Julian, I said. Calm as I could manage. You look like you're about to have a heart attack of your own. He didn't sit, he paced. Back and forth in that tiny living room like a caged animal. I was looking through the Lake County Commercial Registry today. Julian's hands were shaking. Green Wave Energy just logged a deed memorandum. Offshore wind hub. Federal deepwater port expansion. Industrial dock. Gary, Indiana. You're dirt, Dad. You're worthless, toxic dock. He stopped pacing. Stared at me. They flagged the title history because of the liability release I signed 5 years ago. His voice dropped. $22 million. Cash. 30-day close. Eleanor's mouth actually fell open. 22. She looked at me like she'd never seen me before. Elias. Is that true? So that's how they found out, I thought. Not from me. Not from Larry. From a public registry filing. That's almost funny, in a sick sort of way. It's true, I said. Closed 9 days ago. 9 days. Julian's voice climbed. Got shrill. You've had $22 million for 9 days, and you didn't call me. Your own son. I looked at him for a long, long moment before I answered. Last time I called you, Julian, you were at Perry's Steakhouse celebrating a commission. I was sitting in a hospital parking lot, trying to figure out how I was going to pay for heart surgery. You told me I was a bad investment. You told me to ask the state for a payment plan. So no, I didn't feel the need to call you the second something good happened either. That should have been the moment he softened. It wasn't. You hid this from us. Julian's finger came up, jabbing toward me like a weapon. You knew the EPA cleanup was finishing. You knew the dock was about to be worth something. And you made us live like we were struggling this whole time. Eleanor drove a leased Audi, Dad. Leased. While you sat on a fortune. Just so you could hand it all to your favorite kid the second it paid off. He actually believes that, I thought. He's rewriting the entire story in real time. Right in front of me. And he believes every single word coming out of his own mouth. Julian. My voice came out quieter than his, which somehow made the whole room go quieter too. I didn't know the dock was worth a dime until 16 days ago. I found out sitting on your sister's pullout couch, recovering from surgery she paid for. You want to talk about hiding things? I didn't hide a fortune from this family. I hid the fact that I was scared for 10 straight years. Because every time I tried to talk about what I was going through, you told me I'd ruined your reputation. Eleanor stepped in then, arms still crossed, chin up, voice cold. Don't you dare stand there and act like the victim, Elias. I stood by you for 31 years, while you dragged this family through the mud with your disasters. That money belongs to this family. You're being vindictive. Julian finished for her. You're being selfish, Dad, and it's disgusting. Selfish. A man who refused his father $5,000 for heart surgery, calling his father selfish. Over $22 million. The irony was so thick I could taste it. We're not asking anymore, Julian said. And here's where his voice really changed. Dropped low. Mean. The voice of a man who thought he was about to win. Eleanor's filing for legal separation tomorrow morning. Financial abandonment. Concealment of marital assets. The works. My attorney's already drafting a motion to freeze every account connected to that sale. Pending an equitable division hearing. You hid marital assets, Dad. That's not a gray area. That's fraud. He slammed his hand flat on Maya's kitchen table, the same table where weeks earlier she'd slid an envelope of cash across to me. Without hesitation, without a second thought. You're going to be tied up in litigation so long you won't have a cent left by the time we're done. My lawyers will bury you. I looked at him for a long moment. Then at Eleanor. Then I stood up, slow, careful, still tender across the ribs where they'd cracked my chest open. And I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out 2 folded documents. You want to talk about lawyers, Julian? I slid the first document across the table to Eleanor. You remember this? She looked down at it, and I watched the color start draining out of her face before she'd even finished reading the first paragraph. 5 years ago, I said, voice quiet, steady. You and Julian sat me down at my own kitchen table. You were scared, genuinely scared. Scared that the creditors were going to come after your assets because of my dock debt, my contaminated property. Julian's idea, by the way, his brilliant idea. I tapped the paper with one finger. So you signed this. You had your attorney draft what's called a partition and liability release. You took the house and your retirement accounts as your sole separate property, and you legally forced me to take 100% of that dock and all its liabilities as my sole separate property. Read it again, I said, gentle as I could manage, because there wasn't an ounce of satisfaction in me watching her hands start to shake. It doesn't say debt, Eleanor. It says regardless of cause. You didn't just protect yourself from my failure. Under Indiana partition law, you converted that dock into my separate property. You signed away any future claim to its value, regardless of cause. Your own lawyer explained it to you at the signing. And Julian signed as a witness. Julian's face had gone pale too, but he still wasn't done. Never was, that boy. That doesn't matter, he snapped. I'll still take you to. On what grounds, Julian? I slid the second document across to him. Take a good look at this before you finish that sentence. He looked down. It was a bank statement. Maya's bank statement. From 3 weeks ago. $14, I said. That's what was in your sister's checking account. $14, Julian. Because 3 weeks ago, she sold her car. A 2011 Honda Civic with 160,000 miles on it. Got $2,000 for it from some dealer in Hammond. Then she took out a payday loan at 22% interest. So I could get on an operating table. While you were ordering $400 steaks to celebrate a commission you'd already spent, your sister was standing at a bus stop at 6:40 in the morning. In the rain, in the heat, didn't matter. So she have enough money left over to keep the lights on. She makes $41,000 a year, Julian, teaching dying people how to let go with dignity. And she gave me every dime she had. I let that sit in the room for a second. Just the sound of the window unit humming, and Eleanor's breathing going shallow. You want to talk about court, son? Go ahead. Bring your lawyers. Bring every lawyer in Lake County. But before you do, you go ahead and explain to a judge how you plan to claim a share of assets that you legally waived in writing 5 years ago, on your own advice. Signed, notarized, and filed with the county. And then explain to that judge where you were the night your father needed $5,000 to stay alive, and where your sister was. Nobody said anything for a long, long moment. Just the hum of the AC, and somewhere upstairs, a neighbor's TV bleeding through the ceiling. The same TV I'd been hearing every night for 2 weeks. I didn't hide this money from you, I said. And my voice finally came down soft. Tired. Done. I found out about the EPA release sitting right here on that pullout couch. 2 weeks after surgery. It took 30 days to close the sale. The trust was finalized last week. I didn't keep it quiet to be petty, Julian. I kept it quiet because I needed time. To make sure the money went to the only person who actually earned it. I looked at Eleanor first. Then Julian. But I want you both to understand something. Even if I had known sooner, even if I'd had months of warning, it wouldn't change one single thing about this moment. You two divorced yourselves from this family a long time ago. You just hadn't gotten around to the paperwork yet. I folded my hands on the table. The trust is already finalized. Irrevocable. The full $22 million goes to Maya. All of it. The very first thing Larry did this morning was wire transfer a payoff to that predatory payday lender. Burned that contract to ash. She doesn't owe them a dime. Next, I bought the title on this apartment building outright. Maya doesn't pay rent anymore. Not here. Not anywhere. Not while her new house is being finished. I funded the hospice training program she's been trying to start for 2 years. The one the hospital kept saying they didn't have budget for. She's got a car waiting on her too. Brand new. Nicer than the Civic she sold. Though she's probably going to fuss at me about that. I stopped. Looked them both dead in the eye. You're both officially free of my mistakes now. Isn't that what you wanted? For 10 years, I heard about how I ruined this family with my failures. How I destroyed your futures, embarrassed you, held you back. Well, congratulations. The failure's over. And it turns out, the two of you signed yourselves right out of everything that came after it. Eleanor's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time in longer than I could remember. My wife didn't have a single word to say. Julian just stood there, jaw working, face red, staring at that bank statement like it might rearrange itself into different numbers. Like if he looked hard enough, the math would change. It didn't. Get out of my daughter's home, I said. Quiet, final. Both of you. They left in a silence I'd never once heard out of either of them in 31 years. No slammed door. No last word. No threats. Just two people walking out of a one-bedroom apartment, realizing in real time that the very cleverness Julian had always been so proud of, the legal maneuver he talked his own mother into signing, was the exact thing that locked them both out of a fortune they would never see a single dime of. Maya stood in the kitchen doorway after they'd gone, arms wrapped around herself, watching me. "Dad," her voice was barely a whisper, "you didn't have to give me all of it." "Yeah," I said. "I did." I walked over and put my arm around her, careful of my ribs, still healing. And we stood there for a minute in that little apartment, the one that wouldn't be hers much longer. Not because she was losing it, but because she was finally getting more than she'd ever asked anybody for. Cars can be replaced, I remembered her telling me weeks before, sliding that envelope across a diner table. You can't. She'd been right about that. Turned out I couldn't be replaced either. Not to her. And in the end, that was worth more than any number Green Wave Energy ever put on a piece of paper. We stood there in the quiet, my daughter and me, finally safe, finally free. And somewhere across town that same night, my son sat down with his accountant, trying to figure out how to explain to his firm's compliance board why he'd been living well beyond his $12 million portfolio, expecting an inheritance that was never coming. And there wasn't a single soul left in his corner willing to bail him out. Funny how that works out. Now it's your turn. Julian says I'm being vindictive. I say I'm just following the contract he created. If your child hung up on you in a hospital parking lot and told you that you were a bad investment, would you still give them a penny? Let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story hit you in the chest. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I've got more stories like this coming. And I'll see you on the next one.